Yeah, we have certain names for those. But yeah, but that's kind of what we use. A lot of the stuff we use is not open source per se, but as far as the languages we use, they are
They are
open
open
source.
source. Yeah, that's pretty
Yeah.
interesting. Running C sharp on Python. So like what? Because both those languages can kind of be used for scripting.
Mhm.
So it's like I don't know, just trying to imagine what would the Python be an interpreter for the C sharp code, or it's just kind of it's interesting to think about.
So it's so the compiler that actually does it was designed in-house by Intel.
Ah,
Okay,
that
so
makes
yeah,
sense.
exactly. So then it finds a way. We call it. I don't know if I'm allowed to say the actual names. I don't know how personal to Intel it is,
Yeah.
but what it does is it just takes the Python code and the C sharp codes, combines them together, compiles both of them together, and then
Wow.
deploys them to the tools that pretty much tests all the chips Intel creates before
Mm.
the chips go out to the customers.
Yeah, and this topic, or it kind of reminds me about the difference between what it's like working with big versus small companies. In this is something I've experienced in some of the internships that I've done so far. It's like when you're working in a smaller company, a lot of the things you're using is like open source code that other
Mhm.
people have written, but then in-house it's like, or rather if it's a bigger company, it's usually in-house where like they design their own systems, they design their own like compilers, which is like insane. Like the company I work for right now,
Mhm.
I mean, it's a medium size, but nothing to that level of where it's like, oh, they designing so many things of their own. Well, I can only speak for the team I'm on. I don't know about other teams, but yeah, I think that's pretty
Mhm.
interesting. What in your background, like, how have you experienced that in like the different companies you've worked at, in terms of like where they the level of customization they go to for like the tools they use, et cetera, et cetera.
So in my career, I've only worked in two companies, Cummins and Intel, like you said earlier, and they're relatively big companies. So usually a lot of the stuff we use is designed in-house.
Mm-hmm.
However, if I could go back in time and advise myself, I would advise myself to back in college to get an internship or few internships in smaller companies. And maybe my first job out of college should be in like a startup or a smaller company because I feel like there's more room to learn a lot more. As far as by learn, I mean to learn open source stuff that can be transferable from one company to the other
Mm-hmm.
easily. I feel like at the beginning of your career, it's a good time to do something like that. And then maybe your second job, you want to shoot for a much bigger company. So if I
Mm-hmm.
could go back in time, that's the route I'll take. But as of so far, I've only worked in relatively big to
Mm-hmm.
mid-sized companies.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. You talked about like one of the downsides of that, working for a bit, which I've known of, but it's not something that I constantly keep in my mind. But it is important. It's like the idea of like not getting pigeonholed, right? So it's like you can be working for this big company who they build everything that they do in house, right? So you come in and you learn those things, but let's say for one reason or the other you want to switch companies, or God forbid you get laid off or something like that, right?
Mhm.
Now you can't take those skills and apply it elsewhere, because it only exists inside of that big company, which is a downside that I don't think many people might be aware of, but that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Okay, we've been doing a lot of talking. Let's get our hands dirty. Let's start this thing.